Hello, and welcome to another Games Tech Core video. Today we're going to talk about fees being removed from the big cloud providers. Yes, you heard that right. Fees being removed. So let's get into it. So I'm sure most of you watching this are aware, but for those who aren't, you have Amazon's AWS, Microsoft's Azure, and Google's cloud platform. These are the largest cloud services, the largest public cloud services that are on offer. There are other options, but none of them matched the scale of services and customers, of these three giants. So, given the complexity of these platforms, there's various different fees and prices for all different services. But when we're looking at here particularly is around the movement of data. So when you're moving data into these clouds, which is known as Egress, it's free. However, when companies try to move data out of the clouds, they incur significant fees, and these fees is known as egress fees. So, looking here, open up. So here you can see this table here. So this is related to Azure's egress fees. Now this is from DigitalOcean's website, who is a competitor. All something to note, but I'm sure that the fees here are accurate. So you can see, you're looking at, in the region of sort of 7, 8, 9 cents per gigabyte after the first 100 gigabytes. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but once you start, you can imagine if you're a company that has vast amounts of data in these clouds and you're trying to move that out, that cost can rack up quick, basically. So these are the sort of costs that people people trying to move their data out of the clouds have previously faced. Now, these are, however, being removed. So there's something called the European Data Act. So that came into force at the start of January, with the rules then being applied to the cloud providers in September next year. So it gives them some time to get to speed to comply with the rules. And this is specifically around making it easier to switch between the cloud providers. So exactly this kind of thing, be able to move data out of one provider and into another, for it to make it much more transferable. So that was a big thing that was on these companies' minds, and in line with this, they say it's to benefit the consumer, but you can probably take that with a bit of a pinch of salt. I think this European Data Act has definitely sort of lit the fire into the companies, and Google removed these egress fees at the start of this year. So they were first out the gate, should say, for this removal. In a lot of ways, you probably expect that, as effectively AWS is the front runner here, with Azure not too far behind. I think when I saw it last, it was about AWS around 33% or so, Azure about 20-25%, and I'd have to look up GCP again, but I think it was more the order of like 10. Maybe in that sort of order, give or take 10%. So they're obviously they're most incentivized here to sort of quote do the right thing. So they removed those fees at the start of January. As you can see in this article here, AWS then followed suit in early-ish March to remove these egress fees, and we've then had here where Azure are now also removing the fees as well. So they've also, so all three the large cloud providers will remove these egress fees, which will make it allow companies to be able to move their data, out of the clouds to other providers, without incurring these massive costs. So that's. And that's really the key impact here. So if we're looking at what does this mean, the real key impact, as it said there, is that it'll make it easier then for companies to switch cloud providers. So before, as you can imagine, companies would choose one of these clouds, you'd move your data in, you'd set up all your infrastructure, and there's actually a lot of obstacles then to switch provider. If later on, particularly, you can move into one of these clouds, and then when you're maybe at a smaller scale, and as you grow, then you start to use a lot more of the services, and you start to really incur these costs can often then rack up, and then you have very quite strong vendor lock-in. So this should help with that in terms of being able to move the data out to another provider, which would hopefully spur on competition, which is one of the key objectives of something like the European Data Act. It'll also make it easier for companies in that similar vein to follow a multi-cloud strategy. So that's something, again, similarly about trying to reduce vendor lock-in, but rather than you're in one cloud provider and then you just move to another, so you're kind of looking for the best service that way. It's effectively, you have different services in different providers, so allowing you to optimize your infrastructure, basically, as well as also move some or all of your infrastructure to on premises. Which which requires a lot of technical expertise there, but you can also, if you're at that scale and you have that in-house knowledge, you can really benefit from some savings if you can get that set up right. So all in all, this is pretty good news. I mean, there are a few caveats here. So I mean, first of all, with Azure, they do have a few caveats in terms of the removal of egress fees. So they'll only allow the removal of egress fees if you're fully exiting Azure services. So when I said there about following a multi-cloud strategy, actually for them, it's if you're ending a relationship effectively with Azure, then the fees won't apply, or more correctly, actually, what they'll do is they'll rebate the fees, but it's a bit of a distinction on the difference. But you have to fully exit from all Azure services, which can itself impose a bit of a barrier. There's also some restrictions as well from them, where it only relates to storage data, so taking your storage data out of Azure cloud. But if you still transfer it out for things such as their content delivery network, will still incur standard egress fees. So that's something to know about Azure. Then more generally, as a caveat, I also just looking at that wider picture, that for these cloud providers, vendor lock-in is their game, really. They want to keep you on their services for as long as possible, incurring costs. So while this is certainly on the face of it beneficial, I'm sure I guess companies will need to be vigilant about what other changes to be made, because they'll want to maintain their bottom line in the end. So that's something that will definitely have to be watched closely. And final thing I'd also just note there is that there's an ongoing investigation by the UK, the Competition and Markets Authority. So that was specifically around that sort of lock-in by cloud providers. One of the big things that they did note was around these egress fees. But they have also noted what they call technical barriers to switching. So just the various bits of non-interoperability between the major cloud providers, and how that can actually just in practice also provide a barrier to switching. So it'll be interesting to see how this change impacts that investigation, whether there could be further changes, along those lines. But all in all, to conclude on this, while obviously being vigilant and looking at those caveats, there's no getting around. This is good news. Good news for businesses. Good news for independent developers using these clouds, using these cloud services. So, we want to keep watching it. But this should hopefully make things a bit more flexible and not having to incur these massive costs, which is that's always a plus. So I'll leave it there. I'll leave, as always, the links to the articles in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much.